All right, we are recording, and Linda, you're the one who sort of requested this meeting. So if you want to, you know, dig right in, that would be fine with me. Oh, wait a minute, not hearing you, even though you're not muted. Yeah, can't hear you.
That's a problem.
Oh, there we go. Whatever you
You
did.
can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Darn, I couldn't get out of it that easily.
Like, nope, sorry, got no mic.
I was like, I'll forget the time. My computer didn't work. I'm just kidding. All right, we're just gonna dig in.
Yeah, I mean, because I mean, you want, you had things to say you thought would be easier to say via
Yeah,
Zoom. So
I feel like I could resolve the question at hand, like right now. I was like, let's talk about it a little bit.
got the ultimate answer.
Get this now. No, I know, and I know we're all knowing. Three principle doesn't tell us what to do or not to do. Nobody has the answers. Don't think at all I'm saying anything like that. I'm just like the rest of you, just trying to joke around and, But so this is what I thought would be interesting to start with, is to ask, both of you what you think the three principles mean. What is it? Rather than just the standard pop, sentences. Like, well, what is it saying? I'm just curious what your take on them is.
Well, I can go with what I think. I don't talk about it in terms of the three principles personally. I mean, I call it this understanding because it's easy to understand that way. I mean, that's what we're calling it, I guess, but I don't talk about it in terms of three principles. So, I mean, for me, the things that I find important are that it's our thoughts creating our experience every moment, from moment to moment, and the whole like separate realities things. I mean, those right now to me those seem just obvious common sense, but they are the things that the average person just doesn't know, and if they did, it seems to make a big difference in their lives. So I mean, that's how I personally sum it up. How about you, Dominic?
So to me, it's a description. Well, it's a description of everything, right? So the three principles describe that we're in a world, like, I mean, Sid said, well, this is me taking this away, is that it really is all spiritual. So it's all spiritual, it's all consciousness. But what Sid did was talked about how does that come into form, and how do we, from this physical standpoint, see the stuff that's in front of us. And so that link, as he called it, the missing link, is that formless comes into form as an energy via thought. So there's something that happens there, and then we refract it out and we start to experience these things or see these aspects of really only one energy and one thing, which is it's all spiritual. So that is about it for me. There's something about that. And then, of course, that's purely a description. And then there are, every one of us will make the implications of all of that. And thanks everybody who's joined so far. It's great that you've all joined in. And so we were just getting started, and we were asking, Linda asked the question about what does 3P mean to you? Which is a great question.
So what about you, Linda, since that
Oh,
was
it's funny because I haven't articulated what it would mean to me. I just thought of that. I mean, I know what I live. And I just want to say I'm completely unpracticed at talking about this, completely, especially in a recorded thing. So you just have to forgive me for stumbling.
whatever you say now is going down for posterity, and you have to stick
I know,
with it forever.
So I better get it right the first time.
That's right. No pressure.
So for me, it's the bottom line. Well, there's several bottom lines, but it's living in this present moment. Because in this moment, nothing is happening other than what's happening, and all the rest are thoughts, right? So when you're in this present moment, you know, you're there because you're operating from your wisdom, and you're, you know, I mean, we're presupposing right now that when you're in this present moment, it's just experiencing this moment. And even if you have, which we are going to always have thoughts, but if you have thoughts, just they're not what's happening here. So that's to me what it is. It's just we're here, and not a lot's happening in the present moment. And yet at the same time, so this is where I would say solving the dilemma of the question of the day. And there's a lot more that I'd like to bring up and say and hear what you all have to say. But so the original thing that happened was something about an article that I didn't read, right? And I said, I don't know if that's where your question came from, Dominic, but it happened right after that, where, you know, I had said I have no incentive to read the article because it takes me more away from what I'm after. So, and then you know, whether or not it's related, that's what happened. And then you'd said, you know, do we truly not need anything else? And there's another part you said, something about, that it's, for you, it would stop making you curious if that's all we needed. There's another part, but I don't remember. But so this is what I think. So then the question was, does it open the doors or close the doors? So this is what I would say, is that I'm not interested in more form. Not that I'm not uninterested. I mean, things happen all the time, but the infinite possibilities and the thing I'm after is the awareness, the inside. It's not really inside. It's not. I feel like we are inside of it. It's the within. It's the space. And so that's what I'm open to. That's what if I'm going to read an article that's going to teach me something, I would rather spend my time finding whatever that is within me. That's what I spend my time on. And that within, for me, is unbelievable. What I have been able to come to so far, there's nothing that could make me want it more than what I have seen, felt, experienced, and given on the inside. And so the way I express it is, so it's not the inside. That's why, like, I'll say stuff and I'll be like, I'm just using everybody's words. I would say that, and I even wanted to see if later maybe people were open to a little experience, you know, if this resonates at all, or maybe another time, or maybe not, individually, whatever. But I would call this the awareness space. And it is, you know, we and our thoughts and our personhood, it's like we're more attached to what we can see, hear, and feel, which is form and ourselves as a body, than we are to the awareness space. But I believe we are way more the awareness space. And it's vast, extremely spacious, and we're just in that. So You can give your rebuttals. That's what I'm after. And I have already seen and lived it rocking my world.
Would be great to hear from others. Harry, yeah. Can you unmute, or Jill, you unmute him?
I have my dog here.
Well, obviously, no matter what we think the principles are, there's something far deeper than anything intellectually we can come up with. But we since we're human beings, we like to have an imagination of it. I see the principles as two aspects right this moment. One is that's who I am. Everything that I express comes from the spiritual. The principles are spiritual, and they're the tools of the spirit that lie within myself and my connection to everything out. Within that, I feel safe and secure, because that means everything is perfect. Everything is perfectly designed. Everything is perfect that I'm going through. And life is really about this stuff here, letting it sort of float where it wants to go. And the other thing I see the principles are is a place of safety when I do get lost. So they point me into a direction back inside where the only place that healing exists. And from there, what Linda was talking about, that space then takes care of everything. So we step in, we step out, but when we're stepping out, we're still in. We're just experiencing it in either a personal or impersonal way. That's up to us, of course. So that's kind of what came to my mind.
Yeah.
So with that said, with the definitions, maybe Dominic, you want to sort of ask your question or talk about why you posted what you posted? And
Yeah, I have an experience in the community of you know, that there is a shutting down of everything else. Like when you go to talk about something else, there's a bit of a shutting down, a closed, and it's best expressed in the, why are you looking at that? The principles are all you need. And so that doesn't sit well with me, because to me, I ask the question, has your understanding of the principles opened up a door to infinite possibility where anything is possible? Or has it closed the door to everything else? And all you need are the principles. And let's be clear that the principles are an articulation of something. And whatever it is that Sid articulated, many, many, many other people have articulated it as well. And so when I look to that spiritual nature that is all that there is, I also hear other articulations of the same thing that I find interesting, fascinating, worth exploring or talking about. And I don't mean in the articulation, but there are other ways of pointing. And I'm not sure that it's all that healthy. It's interesting because I've talked to other people. There is not a listening in the community. I find that interesting. It is not a listening. It is very difficult to engage with anyone in the community about other things, other teachings, other things that resonate, other ways of seeing it. And you get all these quotes, like these interesting quotes like, you can't mix this stuff, which, by the way, I think is such a misinterpretation. I don't believe Sid ever said you can't mix this stuff by saying you can't mix teachings. I believe what he was saying is it either works one way or it doesn't, right? So you can't say that it's all thought and then later on say something like, well, you know, but your circumstances do have, if you have a stressful job, I mean, that's valid. Right? If you're working in a life-threatening situation, then that is a valid, you know, thing that's coming at you. Now you can't mix that, right? That's very clear to me because that starts to get into mixing paradigms, right? But that got interpreted into saying you can't mix this stuff. There's only one teaching. It is the three principles, and that's it. You can't mix it with anything else. So that's kind of where my post came from. It was like what appeared to me to be an unhealthy closing down and a limiting something on articulation versus using the principles to open up and be excited about our spiritual nature.
So I have some thoughts on that.
Oh, go ahead, Linda.
Okay. All right. So I'm pretty sure Sid did say that, but I have no idea where to look to find it. So we'll just have to.
Well, I'm the only one who heard of him, so maybe I should say something.
Oh, go ahead. I heard it too, but yeah, go ahead.
No, I knew Sid personally, and
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
so the mixing was more the concept, Dominic, of the purity of the principles had to be maintained, and what the psychologists were doing, where they were taking the principles and mixing in their personal beliefs within that, and developing it within a context from their level of consciousness. Now, obviously, from Sid's level of consciousness, it was pure, and from their level of consciousness, it was impure. So it was not a representation of the purity of the principles. And the purity of the principles must always be maintained. But in regards to your just, I'm not quite finished yet. To your mixing, Sid was never ever said you shouldn't be open to other ways of hearing truth. Truth is truth. Energy, pure energy is pure energy. He never wanted it to be a cult or an only that. And people who are saying that just don't understand. They just don't have the understanding, Dominic, yet. They're on a different level of consciousness. Learn from wherever life brings you. And you know, I've learned from other teachers who I took a piece of something that I couldn't hear through Sid, so I took it through someone else. I'm a human being, individual. I need to experience my life within myself, and what invigorates me, what creates that passion for the love of the spirit that you're talking about. So I just want to make just that clarity with that. He did say, don't mix your personal beliefs or your personal agendas or your past teachings with the purity of the principles. And that it's a feeling, not a bunch of knowledge and stuff type of thing. But no, he didn't want you to compare, this is better than that. He didn't want you to say, you can't learn. He said, you learn from everything in life, not just, and that's a box. You may not be wrong about the box you describe, but it's just a box.
That's helpful. And the way you articulated that is, I gotta say, is that the other place that I've heard that very clearly is when Garret writes, because he'll often say about not mixing belief. And for a long time, I was kind of like, what's he talking about? And I have noticed that. And I don't know, Garret, if you want to comment on that, but that is something that you keep saying is
Simple.
not about belief and not mixing belief with the teaching.
Since we designed this for us to go back and forth on it, I would like to respond to what you said, Dominic. And I apologize to Harry because I just didn't want to forget what I was.
No, I'm interested in what you have to say. Yeah, that's what it's about. So
yeah, and I'd like to hear what Garret has to say. Yeah. I just want to, and I'll probably forget parts of it, but I would like to address each part because it is something that comes up a lot. So let me see what I can remember. It's just my own memory. So about the thing we're talking about, well, I don't take it like we shouldn't mix this with something else, or that we, shouldn't read other articles or do things. For me, it's, we don't need to. That's what we keep talking about. And I agree. I mean, if somebody, shuts you down and says you don't need anything else, I mean, of course that's going to be difficult. But I think it may be partly because they're just trying to explain, oh, why would you need that? Why would you even need that? So just to explain that part, I would say that why would we need something in form in the material world, other people's thoughts, which is what an article is? Why would we need any of that if we really truly have our own wisdom? And to me, every time I'm going outward to try to learn something, I'm not going inward. It doesn't mean on the overall. Of course, you can do both, but and I read things like it's not a problem. And there, nobody's saying don't read anything. It's just that I'm more interested in the space. That's what I would say. I'm, and there's, when Sid talks about, the feeling is unbelievable and the wisdom can be. Sage? Hey. Anyhow. Yeah, I would say that, I guess we said it before, but this world of Sage, this world and anything I've been able to get from it doesn't compare. So there's no, and I believe, it seems to me that most people know this, that we have this inner wisdom and that we're to look within, to not pay too much attention to the thoughts, but it's kind of like that. They spend their time mostly talking about, thinking about, wondering about the thoughts. That's what it seems like to me for a lot of other people. And I don't know how much they're actually really going within. Again, it's not within. But even before writing their post, it's like, boom, does the mind already have the idea of what the answer is? And everybody starts typing, and it may not be true for you guys. I'm just saying in general. But I think it's more than just, okay, now I'm going to go within. I think there's, that awareness space that we are, it's so different than it's the hey, I have to really yell at her, get her to stop. I don't think anyone wants to hear that. Sage, come here. So, yeah. Like I said, I would like to, it's not a exercise that's a big deal. I just want to do it, not right now, Just see what people think. Sage, come here. But anyhow, so I was trying to respond more to a couple things you said, Dominic. Are there other, main points that you were saying that I'm not remembering right now?
I never really get that part about, when you're an engineer, there is sort of like physics, which is pure truth. And that doesn't make you able to build a bridge, right? Because there's different, like once it comes from expressing that pure truth into form in a useful way, the principles are not all you need, right? So you can do all the physics theory, which gives you the pure truth of how it all works, and you still can't build a bridge, because when it comes to the world of form, there's actually really, really useful teachings.
Yeah.
And so to hear something like the principles are all you need, especially the principles are all you need for this or that or anything in the world of form, it is the principles will maybe point you back to all that you are, at least the source of all that you are, but all that you are does not exist somewhere as some spiritual, pure consciousness. It is in constant expression into form. God is there and he is not silent. He doesn't sit silently somewhere. God is expressing into form. So that part of it is to take God and say it's over in some kind of pure consciousness and turn away from all of this and go back and look there.
Dominic.
Yeah.
I think that what Linda's saying, and Linda, you tell me if I'm off base, but I think what Linda's saying is not what you just said. I think you're both kind of right about what you're saying, obviously, but I think what Linda's saying is know yourself, know who you are, look within. That's what I think you mean by look within, Linda. And because you can't find yourself, eternal peace, in form. So I think Linda's saying, know thyself. And then the rest will take care of itself in form, using that word. It's not a word I would use, but in the material world. I think does that sound right, Linda?
Partly. I'm partly saying that.
Okay, because that would make, that I think you're both saying that, because we know who we are. And I think that's what Sid was very clear about. And then be in the world, not of it. And I think you can't find yourself, as Linda's saying. You can't find who you are in who you are not, in objects, in the material world, the world of form as you describe it. You can't find yourself there. So Linda, and I share this with her, I'm not interested, and nor, as Linda said, rightly so, in looking for myself out there. That's what our culture, it seems to me, is kind of stuck in. And let's turn around metaphorically, and let's hold still and let the activity of the separate self or the ego run it, exhausted of its fuel supply, and then we'll look within. And then from there, intuitively, naturally, however you want to say it, we will go back out into the world, and as love, as consciousness, as Sid Banks was. That's what Harry meant about Sid's level of consciousness. He went back out into the world from that perspective. Once he found who he was. And I think that's the greatest message of Sid's work. That was it. So I don't know. I thought that's what.
Yeah. Let me add to that, because I would definitely say all of that. But I would also say that we do live in a physical world, right? And just like you're saying, there's physical laws and there is a material world. This is the way I see it. I believe that if people were more looking within, that the things that we have created and our whole lifestyle, I think lots of that would change. I think, you know, here we have this prefrontal cortex. This is how I see it. Evolution came along, and we have a prefrontal cortex that can think, but it's running amok because nobody knows. They believe it. They think, and we already all know this part, but you know, people think it's wise counsel, and so whatever their minds think, they go for. And if that were not the case, it would be a very different world. And so when you talk about, yeah, we need to learn how to build a bridge, sure. If we want to build bridges, to me, that's not separate from three principles. It's still, the ideas come from wisdom, and, you know, you need to learn how to build a bridge if you want one. But, you know, I just believe it would be a very different dynamic and structure had we not just gone only with the mind. So I'm saying that, yeah, we can learn to do things like that, but do we even need them in the first place? I can think of lots of things we don't need. I don't need them. I don't use a lot of what's out there in the world because I just have a different, like that article, I have a different priority.
Well, you always start with yourself. Like when you start to spread out into the world, you don't start with yourself. You're just talking about the outside. But when you start with yourself, that's where when you change, the way you experience the world changes and your view changes. And that will never end. It's always inside out. And the change that we would like to see in the world, well, of course, we would like it to be more peaceful and more creative and more beautiful in certain ways. But the feeling that Sid's talking about is the feeling inside of you. And when that changes, you just live in a more impersonal reality.
Harry, you mean,
it doesn't matter as much.
Harry, when you say inside of you, the feeling Sid was talking about was inside of you. You don't mean inside the body, though.
No, of course not. It's a metaphor, Garret.
Yeah, but that's I think we better. I just wanted to be sure because that's.
Yeah, that's just the way I describe it to you. But absolutely, the you, that is an impersonal you, or a spirit you.
Yeah.
You know, it's a formlessness. I don't know. To be honest, I only have a sense of it. I cannot describe it. But to start from inside is the place to start.
Cool. And that's great. That's really wonderful.
Anything else, once we start talking about the world and so on, we get lost.
I think, yeah, Linda's onto something. I mean, and as you are, I think it's really well said. I think it's well put. It's important.
Yeah, and I think there's, again, back to the bridge, like you said, Dominic, there's certain things we need to learn, but those are usually, you know, that's building a bridge. It's not us as, you know, the awareness that we are. I mean, it's all one, but there's a, you know, you don't look within for a bridge. And again, it's not within, it's just in that space. It's like, I know it, and I feel it, and I live it, and I know it, but articulating it, I'm just not very skilled at it, so.
So I have a question just based on, you know, Dominic's original question. I mean, is any of this what anyone here is saying then? I mean, Linda, I don't think, are you saying that people don't need to or shouldn't, you know, learn non-duality or listen to Adi Ashanti or whatever it might be. I mean, is that maybe I'm just confused, but I'm not understanding how this relates so much to Dominic's question. And I also have a question for Dominic as, do you really see in this community, I mean, like, who are you talking about that says we shouldn't, learn from other things or whatever? I think for me, there's a stage people go through. New people go through that. I went through that where, oh, this is it. You don't need anything else. And, and you're always telling people, no, you're wrong. But I feel like that's a early stage, sort of what Harry said. But I do see that there are some old time teachers that might also say that too, that had studied with Sid. But I think the majority of the community, I don't hear that, at least.
Well, let me give you a practical example. We're doing an addiction conference in May, and I'm involved in that community quite a bit. And of course, the conflict, Dominic, is 12 steps versus 3 principles. And within that, there's a tremendous amount of different people having different points of view about that type of thing. And within it, in our program, Addiction, Alcoholism, and the 3 Principles, we had a discussion on that. And the purpose of the discussion was for us to all start to see a little bit clearer, because I had prejudice. I had personal prejudice against the 12-step, except that it has much more results as well as failures in it. And so we have to become clear, if we're in that area, of how beautiful that is, along with how beautiful the 3 principles are. And within that has been a major learning. And the other thing that we have to learn is we still haven't arrived. We're not doing such a great job at addiction. We have a lot of nice results, but there is also, we are a long way from developing a program that will change the world in that direction. So we are an emerging community. And as you can probably see, that simple example, it has created a tremendous amount of discussion. And to be honest, I've liked that.
So my take, Jill.
Wendy's had her hand up for a whole long.
Oh.
Jill. Sorry, Linda.
Oh, I didn't even see it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Hi, this is Wendy. What I'm picking up from this conversation, from Dominic's original post, if you will, is that, well, let me just reverse it. To me, the principles are very, very foundational. They are deep, they are specific, and they are human beings experience the world. And that is universal, forever and a day, period, end of story. But that can manifest itself in, I'm a bridge builder. Oh, I'm an alcoholic counselor. Oh, I'm a this, I'm a that. And so what I'm hearing Dominic say is that sometimes if you say, gee, look at how the world works from this perspective, from a Byron Katie perspective, or from whomever, isn't this interesting? And what I'm hearing him say is that there are some in the community, our community, the 3P community, that say, oh, brother, there he is talking about Byron again. What a waste of time. Poor Dominic. He's out of his mind. Doesn't he know the 3Ps is all you need? And I just find it really kind of a fascinating thing that the 3Ps to me are so foundational, so universal, so deeply true, that they just have, they're at the core, and there are interesting green shoots that come off of it. What's the problem in talking about green shoots? That's what I see. And so I find it interesting that I didn't even know that there was, well, I'm not necessarily experiencing it firsthand, but I completely trust Dominic. And maybe I just kind of ignore those things when I see other people are dismissive about interesting questions or interesting perspectives. And I just dismiss them. I don't know. But from this conversation, I'm hearing what Dominic really articulated well at the upstart of the conversation. So I just wanted to weigh in on that.
But Byron Katie, by the way, is a good example because clearly there is a woman, and if you ever listen to her, she went from, almost being unable to operate in the world because of what a freak she was. And just from the perspective of totally losing all identity and kind of where she was at, and then sort of came a little bit more into the world and then began articulating her thing. Now, I do see with that where 3P has engaged with that, and then from a deep understanding of the principles can actually show why the work works. I don't know how to say it, but, she says you do the work, right? And she says you question the thought and blah, blah, blah. Well, we know you don't have to. We know you don't need this process. However, with a deep understanding of the principles, you can see why people get relief. The principles do explain why the work works for the people that it does work for. And what's great about the 3 principles is we know it's completely unnecessary. You don't require a process like that. But, and by the way, Byron Katie in her latest book, and I don't know if she ever said you need to do the work, but in her latest book, she's very clear you don't need to do the work. She's very clear this is a process, and that this is a process that can sometimes help people sort of bridge or get somewhere, and it's not necessary, right? So, but it's kind of like where the principles shut that down, don't look at that, don't read any of that, that's all nonsense. I don't think that that's helpful.
So that's a perfect example of what I'm saying. So, of course, Sid said truth is everywhere. So, but with Byron Katie, she wouldn't say, you can't do so all you need is that last question. What's the last question? Who would you be without this thought, right? Actually, you only need any of them. Like, we just already know the thought isn't real, so we don't need the rest of it. So I'm saying that's what I'm trying to say about anything other than the principles or anything like it. It's not that you shouldn't do it. It's just like, why would you need to? Why would you need to go walk through all the steps of Byron Katie when you can just know that thought is not real? That's what it is. It doesn't say don't do it. What's that?
I would answer that in that it sometimes we don't, most of the time we don't see that it's thought. And by doing the questions, which I don't do, but sometimes I might think about the final one or whatever, by doing those questions, we can suddenly see it. We may suddenly see that it is thought. It's just a means of making it happen quicker than waiting and waiting and waiting for wisdom to come through. So that's why we don't have to.
We're not saying you shouldn't. We're not saying you shouldn't do it. I feel like people are they don't need my permission, right? They don't, who would be saying you shouldn't? Nobody has that authority to tell anybody they shouldn't. Even if they do, that's their thought. So it's not about what you should or shouldn't do. And, and I know Sid said, teach what you know. So there's nothing wrong with people coaching or whatever. You just teach what you know. But the more you know, the more you can teach, right? So I don't think anyone's saying, don't look at anything else, but it's more like, why would you need to? And not why would you to, but you don't need other things when you really understand it. That's how I take it.
I just want to say one thing. I have to go. I have to play tennis with my son. So I asked the rabbi, or I was listening to the Rabbi Rosenblatt, who's a Jewish rabbi, and there was this way how he described it. When he has a spiritual insight from the 3 principles, his understanding of Judaism goes way up. And when he has a spiritual insight from Judaism, his understanding of the 3 principles goes way up. That's all I say. I have to go. Thank you very much. I'd like this, but I have my son will kill me if I'm not there.
Thanks, Gary.
Okay.
And I agree. I think that's why, because first of all, why not? But then it does. Other things. You hear the principles in a different way, and you suddenly have more insights. For me, that's why I listen to millions of other things and go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper every time. And I don't have to. I can just listen to the principles. That's why we listen to different principles teachers as well, because they all say it in different ways of what it means to them. But in the end, it is all the principles, one way or another.
Garret, earlier you were trying to get in something.
No, I think the only thing I was thinking of was that I think there's a little romanticism around Sid's insight. And I think his journey, his process, not, Byron, I don't even know Byron Katie's whatever process that is, but his exploration, his journey was much more arduous and rigorous than has been presented. So it presents itself in a way that, oh, this will just hit you and you'll get it. When I think that as Jill was indicating, there's a method to Byron Katie's madness in that she knows very well that, but for a very, 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 very small percentage of us human beings, it's going to take a journey within to get it. And she's helping you along that journey. So, I think Sid was on a similar journey. I think it's been romanticized. It's a big story, but so we go on our journey and we strip away, and that's interesting. That's the interesting part of it. As Jill was indicating, you pick up things, you look, and I think that's what we're all doing in our own way.
Well, that's why I think it's better this is my opinion, that to coach the three principles, teach three principles, have a three principle coach. I just think, why not spend time with that? If we believe in three principles, I don't mean everyone should. If we're all on a group based on the three principles, believe in three principles, I don't see the point in not spending time in three principles. Not that,
Mostly,
and also, looking in or without. What's that?
Yeah, mostly because I've learned more about the three principles from the teachings of Abraham than I have from the three principles. And I'm learning more about the three principles from Garret's often very confronting posts about non-duality. And so that, to me, is why other things can be useful.
But I think what you'd find, Linda, you know this, Linda, is that Abraham, Ramana Maharshi, Sid Banks, they're all basically saying the same thing when you get right down to it. And the same with me and Dominic, getting to know him, is that I think we're kind of sifting through the layers that have been thrown on top of Sid's seeing. We're kind of working back, and I think that's what Dominic's. And so I would say that my experience is similar to Dominic's in that respect.
But Abraham is talking a lot about manifesting, and I know they say get happy first and all of that, but Abraham's not really talking about living in this moment.
I really don't like hearing people talk to me about what Abraham says. So, so that's just not at all useful. I
But
have
I mean, Abraham's talking about it using your thought.
an understanding. I have very few people that I could have a conversation with about Abraham who actually understand. So
So what is Abraham saying to you? To me,
that's not,
it's using your thought to manifest. I'm going to go.
yeah, let's not worry
It's
about.
another whole webinar.
Yeah, that would be
Let's
another
do it.
webinar.
I used to teach Abraham for years. Yeah, I'd be interested in doing that.
But I think bottom line is, Linda, that you you have your understanding that works for you, that you can see right now that that's all you need, and that's great. I mean, I think that's fine and that's great, but you're projecting it onto that nobody, that everybody else. It's that's your reality, your separate reality, which again, it's great, and there are others who believe that as well, and it's all it's all good. We all have our beliefs and stuff about any of this and anything else. As you can see, others like to learn other stuff for their own personal reasons. That's all good.
But I mean, I'm promoting the 3 principles in a 3 principle group. Like in another place, I wouldn't do that. And the question.
That's fine. It's all good.
Can
I think Rui
say
wants
that?
to. Rui has something to say here. So
Oh,
go ahead,
the
Rui.
other room. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Rui's got something to throw.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I just have kind of a comment. I mean, similar to what you're saying, Linda. And I think this is, as Jill said already, this is, at the end of the day, it's our opinions count for what they count. They are just our view of the world. But for me, it came as a surprise being in this community and being in so many groups, or not so many, but a couple of 3P groups, especially the one from Ankush, for example, where he's talking about coaching and the principles. And it came as a surprise for me when for example, I mean, Michael, he's not here today, but I think that starts some of the discussions that have been and probably originated this webinar today, that I start asking, why was he now going in the direction of learning more about coaching when he already knows the principles? So that's, I think I remember asking that question, because for most of the other people that are in the community, and special people that are training other coaches in this community, once they understood and were impacted by the principles, their direction was always going deeper and deeper and deeper. And as they call it, grounding. And at any time I hear other coaches like Mike O'Neill, Aaron Turner, and others returning to the other strategies and techniques to help supporting their work with clients and with coaches. For me, it came as a surprise, but I'm not saying that is wrong. I think no one is entitled to say that. It just was a surprise because probably was the first person I saw within this community that was kind of going backwards, kind of in the way I see it, of course. And I kind of go along with Linda as well. I would say, if, for example, let's say there is no way out, right? Once you start in the principles, you can only go deeper, right? And if you're not satisfied with your with the work you're doing with your clients, probably what you'd hear from more experienced coaches and teachers would be, probably you need to go deeper, right? It's not that, and deeper probably means work more with clients and sharing what you know, teaching from where you are. And I know, Dominic, you have a very strong opinion about coaching, and it's your passion, and I fully understand that. But it doesn't mean that that person will be a better coach by learning the strategy. Probably could be a better coach as well if he had stayed more grounding in the principle. So it's just an option. He went left, he could have gone right. Both are fine, but one doesn't invalidate the other, right? So it's not that he was grounding in the principles, but if he would not go for coaching education, he would not be good with clients. So I disagree with that. I think we don't know.
I have a lot of experience with people who haven't a clue what coaching is and watching how ineffective they are because they just miss a few simple essentials and understanding. And a lot of experience has to do mostly in the business world with managers, right? So, and there is lots of, stuff around where managers believe that they are good coaches, right? And what I'm going to call a good coach is someone who actually impacts the performance or the outcome or something about another person, because this is what coaching is about. And so people say that they know what coaching is or are good at it. And they don't. Basically, mostly people haven't a clue what coaching is. The profession is too new. And so they believe they do. It's about telling people what to do, sharing stories with them, trying to change their mind, all kinds of stuff, mentor them. They do all kinds of weird stuff, but they just don't get what coaching is. And so everyone with a little bit of education about what those key essentials are will get far more effective in coaching. And grounding in the principles does not help. It just doesn't help. It helps you sort of become grounded in all of that, but you still can't be a lawyer. You can be grounded in the principles and you still can't be a plumber. Because you just don't know the principles of plumbing, right? Yeah. And so the same with coaching.
Can I say something? I mean, I think that's very extreme scenarios, but so somebody who, for example, a lot of coaches that come to Michael Neal's course or Aaron Turner's or George Pransky or others, so most of them probably start by a normal certification on coaching. So most of them are coaches with a certification. It might have been, I can't talk for others and how much time they invested on their own coaching, but most of them have even been working as a coaches for years with all the techniques, the models they use, whatever that would be, right? And when they get in contact with the principles and they are impacted by the principles, because one of the things Sid always said is the only way you can impact others is almost like if you walk the talk, right? So if you actually are talking from your experience, from what actually impacted you, then you probably will be more convincing and impactful to others than just talking about theoretical things that everybody could learn on books or doing courses. So that was one of the big differences that we could impact people in these communities, that you would talk from your own experience and truth.
You definitely can impact people. You can have a wonderful conversation and you can maybe even lead people to deep spiritual insights. And that's not coaching.
But I have something to say. Okay. So if we were in a regular group or, a coaching group, whatever, if we were in some group and I was trying to convince you that the 3 principles is the way to go, that would be a little weird. It's like, who are you to tell me 3 principles? But if we're in a 3 principles group and we're promoting 3 principles, I can't see where there's a problem. Okay, and so like Dominic, when you say, if you're wanting to be a lawyer, you need to learn to be a lawyer, right? Of course. So if you're wanting to be a 3 principles, if you're promoting 3 principles, or if you believe in 3 principles, why wouldn't you want to be a 3 principle coach? That's what you believe in. And the thing is, wait, I've got one more. Wait. I've got one more thing to say. Sorry, I'm the CEO of several companies. I know how to shut people down. Sorry. The last thing I want to say is that I hope I don't forget it. One of the main tenets. It's not a tenet. It's how you live when you see it is your inner wisdom. So I know one of your main things for coaching is that people need to learn a set of skills to not, introduce your own thinking about it. Make sure you go with which I think is beautiful. I love that. Go with what the coachee, says. But in 3 principles, it's not about the skills. It's about sharing who you are, what you know, not coming up with skills, just sharing from your true inner wisdom. And for me, that happens the more you look within.
And that's the 3 principles: teacher, preacher, and sharer, right? So let's just leave coaching out of it. But that is a 3P teacher, 3P mentor, a 3P teacher, a 3P preacher. All of those are valid.
We're 3P.
That's the bottom line, I think, is all Dominic's trying to say is, he has a specific definition for what a coach is, and he has no problem with anybody saying that they're a 3P mentor and doing whatever it is we might do as a mentor or facilitator or any other word. It's just that the word coach to him and many in if you're in the certified coaching industry, which I have nothing to do with, and I'm not a coach, that they're in that world trying to preserve that word to mean something specific, and I have no problem with that, and I'm happy that I have learned that from Dominic what that means, so that I don't mix up what it is that I might do.
I slightly disagree with that, because Michael Neal, for example, might not be an ICF coach, but probably everybody in this community, outside of the community, we consider him a coach. Dominic, I think you did also a course with him. So
Super Coach Academy. I'm a graduate.
Yeah, you probably recognize.
And my colleagues in that program developed a lot of grounding in 3 principles and very little coaching skill. And I can speak.
But can I finish
clearly about it because we would do coaching with each other, right?
Yeah.
So when we were doing coaching with each other, you could see that they didn't know what coaching was, and so it's so obvious that it's.
Yeah. So what I was trying to get at is that so he has his recognition and his reputation for the work he has done with clients and other coaches like yourself that went there to do his programs, and he also at some point started sharing more the 3 principles instead of just coaching and asking questions. I did a certification as well in coaching, and although the trainers that were master coaches were advising people, of course, in the beginning to stick with the models and techniques and avoid sharing, they said at some levels they would start sharing as well. So I don't think sharing is like something you can't do as a coach. I don't see that written anywhere, and that's why I think you're doing a huge separation by saying that a lot of 3P practitioners and coaches and teachers, they are not coaching just because they share, or they might teach.
That's not what I'm saying, but anyway, yeah. No, you do everything in coaching. You can teach, you can share, you can do all of that, but it's not that I look at. I look at coaching distinctions and whether those are understood and whether they occur in the coaching conversation.
I've had an insight while we were talking, and the insight is the term with the 3 principles we can go deeper, as though the 3 principles were a pond somewhere that you could delve into that was separate and apart from us. In my mind, the 3 principles are you can't be a human being unless you typically have a skeleton and some musculature and perhaps a brain. That could define a human being. We could argue that. And from thence, we could expand or expound or whatever. It seems to me that the 3 principles are deeply part of every human being's experience, and all our whole lives, though that those principles have been covered up, blanketed, obscured. with other ways of looking at how, well, human beings are full of problems and they need to be solved. So you need to go to outside to somebody else and say, please help me with my XYZ, whatever it is. And now we know that experience comes from the inside out. And so it's just completely foundational, and it's not about going deeper into them. It's about taking stuff off and releasing the power that's in there. And so the power that's in there animates, wow, isn't this interesting what Byron Katie says? Wow, isn't it interesting what Abraham says? Wow, isn't it interesting what XYZ says? So for a 3 principles person to be interested in life, that's the point, in my humble opinion.
Good. Sounds good to me. I just have one question for Dominic. I think, we don't need to really get into the coaching stuff so much, that only because that was other things. But I am curious because we asked it in my other group with Rui, if Dominic, what would you say that Michael Neal, what he does when we hear him like on the radio or something, is he a coach? Is that coaching?
Well, let me. I can give you the best example. If coaching is just because Michael Neal shares the model in Super Coach Academy, he's public about what his coaching model is. It's show up and respond to what shows up. And so this story, which he has shared several times, is quite interesting, right? Because Rui, if that's the case, Michael Neal has the principles. He's grounded in them very well. And he talks about a story where he's on a walk with his friend. It's a very good friend of his. And he shares in that story that they're having a conversation. And they get to the end. And the friend says, wow, it is so great to have the world's greatest coach that I could just talk to. And Michael Neal's response was, what? He said, I can get free coaching anytime I want just by having a conversation with you. And this is what's curious. Michael Neal said, you think that was coaching? It's very curious. Michael Neal, grounded in the 3 principles, this is all you need. And he says to his friend, you think that was coaching? And what does that mean? What that means is that what Michael Neal was doing in that conversation was not coaching. And Michael Neal is aware of that. When Michael Neal is in a coaching conversation, and by the way, on Hay House Radio, those are not pure coaching conversations. He doesn't have the time, nor does he have an agreement or permission from the callers who dial in, right? So, but Michael Neal is aware of the distinction. And so he said to his friend, oh no, if you want to have a coaching conversation, we can have that. And it wouldn't have been what we just did, right? So that would suggest that there is a different structure. And Michael Neal was with his friend. I believe he was fully present with his friend, and he certainly was fully grounded in the principles. And yet there was some structure and approach to that conversation that Michael Neal was able to distinguish that was not coaching. And it is that I say people need to learn.
Yeah, I heard that. I think I heard him tell that story, and I was so confused because I'm like, well, what is the difference? Like, I still, I know more now just from listening to what you've talked about as it. But I remember hearing that going, it's not. That's not coaching, because that's what my conversations with people are. Were more that way, and I still don't know what the distinction is too much, but I don't know that it matters. For me.
And you know what? It's not overcomplicated. It's not that complicated. And you saw my Coaching 101 webinar. At the end of the day, it's not that complicated. The ICF has simply identified just a few simple ideas, and none of them are in conflict with the principles, but in the form of coaching, they are essential. Otherwise, there's all kinds of implications and things if you're not grounded in all of that. There are all sorts of implications. You will get people getting defensive. You will get people shutting you down, doing all kinds of stuff. You cause yourself a lot of trouble when you tell someone you're coaching them and then you go do something else, right? So,
I mean,
I would just say that, you know, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were speaking, but okay, I'll really quick. I would just say that, you know, we're in a 3 principles group. We're not in a coaching group. Well, it is a coaching group because he's kind of done both. But if you're living from the 3 principles, if you're interested in the 3 principles, that's about going within, you know, relying on your inner wisdom. So I guess it depends on what your goals are. I mean, I feel like
if that is so valuable, then let's talk about my marriage. Let's talk about my children. Let's talk about my career. Let's talk about the world, right? So if we're in a 3 principles group, let's talk about how I actually use this. I use this in my profession. My profession is about helping people. It's about helping them see things. It's about causing breakthroughs for them. And if I can't talk about that in a 3 principles group, I think that's really odd.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah, I don't think that you can't talk about it, and I think we should all talk about how we see and how we were impacted by it. What the only thing, and maybe I misunderstood, but with a lot of posts and videos, I unfortunately couldn't join a couple of them, but I was away on vacation. But what it seems to me, for example, with Michael Neal, for example, he called himself a transformative coach, and one example he gives, and he also says that at some point he started sharing the principle as part of his coaching. So he says he loves and he wants to wake people to what they really are, right? That's part of the transformative coaching he does. So what for me is not clear sometimes is if you keep so strict to the coaching model, and you don't allow yourself to teach or share the principles, for example, or what you were impacted by, and you think it can impact others as well. If you leave that aside and just focus on what the client wants, and the client might be very, although I know what you think about, and I agree with you, Dominic, that he has the infinite potential to be whatever he want to be, but he might be very blocked at the point he's working with you. And if that expression, like waking people up, if you don't wake the people up, he might stay 20 more years on that level of understanding. He might progress very small steps with you because you don't want to influence or share anything that he doesn't bring to the conversation. So for me, and I think for others, it's almost like you know that person can be more impacted, but you are keeping their own pace because that's what coaching says. And I kind of disagree with that. If I listen correctly to that person and I see openings where that person can be impacted, and I would miss them because it's not a teaching moment or not a sharing moment.
Well, the part that what you've challenged on, which is totally valid, is that the structures, and if you've done any training that have structures and a coaching process and they've got techniques and all of that, it is very common in the beginning to train people. I do this with managers too. I'll give them the grow model. I give them this stuff. And it's very common it's sort of like giving them training wheels. But ultimately, that stuff's useless because if they don't get balance, they can't actually ride a bike. So the training wheels can be helpful at times, but the intent of training wheels or some of these structures is to go beyond them. And so when you refer to coaching and you speak about rules like you can't share stories, you can't teach, you can't do that. So just to put your mind at ease, none of that is actually true in the mastery level of coaching. But what happens with novice and intermediate and then moving toward mastery is the way that that's structured is ICF first says, Do you even know what coaching is? Are you at least able to conduct a conversation which looks somewhat like a coaching conversation? Do you know how to stay in it, right? And then, then you move higher, etc. But ultimately at mastery level, everything is thrown out. And then it becomes the presence of the coach and all of that. But
I'm going to have to go
you're
soon.
valid.
Goodbye.
Yeah. And, I feel like, I feel like part of what's happening is on the group, it is partly 3P and it's partly the solution focused and your coaching. I think that's kind of part of it. Cause like with this, I feel like I'm more interested in 3P than I am in other things. So but I have to go anyway, but even that, it's like, that's not something I'm that interested in. And I guess I just would say to close that I think what might be more helpful, if people are interested in going deeper with the 3P, which is what I think we're all here for, understanding 3P. I know, like Jill said, that works for me and maybe not work for everyone, but that's what we're here for, to learn more about it. So it seems to me that maybe listening to a part of Sid Banks or taking a writing and discussing that. I know Michael has had some videos like that, but it was a long listening and then discussing. And then a lot of people said, I had no idea what he said, but I was thinking, just take a short amount and let's discuss it, because if we believe in what he said, then, we either believe it or we don't, right? So we either go with it or we're just not interested in 3P. Who cares? Nobody needs to be a 3P person.
Before you go, Linda, I don't see the 3Ps as anything to believe in or not believe in. It's like saying, does air exist? Let's debate it for the rest of our lives. There is no debate. There is oxygen, whatever you want to call it. There's something that keeps me alive and enervates me. So it's not about that, but for me, it isn't about that at all. And yes, we can talk about the 3Ps and how wonderful they are, but at some point in time, life needs to be lived. And my perspective as a registered nurse is the germ theory is much more interesting to me gravity, all that stuff. Germ theory. I may be aware of germ theory and know that this is how people get sick, is when they have dirty fingers stuck up their wazoo when they're trying to deliver a baby. I may know that or I may not know that, but as a registered nurse, I better know that and I better apply that. And maybe I'm going to be a good labor and delivery nurse now that I know germ theory, or maybe I'm going to be a good AIDS nurse now that I know germ theory, and so there's a lot of conversations that can be had about how germs go from one person to another in labor and delivery or whatever. That's what Dominic is saying. Can I please talk about labor and delivery and how I want to be a better labor and delivery nurse? Or can I please talk about, without somebody saying, oh my gosh, could you just talk about germ theory? Do you have to talk about labor and delivery again, Wendy? That's what I'm hearing Dominic say, that there's some sort of a frustration with, I'm talking about our baseline, and look at this creativity that's coming forth from me and from others to kind of build on it, as opposed to keep grasping at it, talking about it, peeling it back. How many different ways can we say the words germ theory? Can we just use germ theory as the basis and grow from that? That's where my frustration is with, and I completely commiserate with Dominic, as if I haven't made that eminently clear in my conversations.
Well, the other piece, just for the bottom.
I gotta go.
Okay, you can listen to
Bye,
this.
everybody. We'll do this again.
Thank you. Thanks for this.
Thank you.
And
It's fun.
I'm going to end this too in a second, but I just wanted to say, because you're talking about 3P groups there's a whole bunch of groups out there, and Michael has chosen to create this group the way he's created this group, and anybody can start their own group, or they go to a different group where they just talk about 3Ps and stuff too. So it's not like this is the 3P group that that's out there. And so there's something for everybody out there, and we can all create whatever we want to create as well. And Michael's chosen to do this his way, which is great
Yeah.
for everyone
And
else.
it's a fabulous group. It's a very engaged and beautiful group to be part of. And I think everybody that shows up at the Saturday morning conversations can attest to that. You know, there's more to it.
Thanks,
So,
Michael.
yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, I think
Thank you.
we can end it here unless you have anything else, Dominic.
No, thank you everybody for your
Yes,
very
thank you.
engaged participation. And thanks for everyone for your interest. This was great.
And I will have it's recording, so I'll post that up on my YouTube channel and put it in the group too.
Thanks, Jill.
Bye.
Thanks, Dominic.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. This was
Bye.
great. Bye. Thanks, Jill.